Okay, we're ready.
Hello.
Ready to get started.
I should probably wear this.
Welcome to Coffee at 10. We're all emerging, hopefully not too badly scathed from the ice storm, recovering from it. And so it's really nice to be back together after a few very difficult weeks.
Mhm.
In this joyful room of student art and with this amazing educator and Morningstar.
Thank
So
you.
thought I'd start out. I know just about everybody here, but Sheila, the visual arts department person here, director, and there's Alyssa over there. She's running the tech and that works with education and the sales gallery and everything. And we're really delighted to have you all here today. And just want to thank our sponsors. We always get coffee and great pastries from Roast and Toast, and then Comfort Keepers supports all of our visual arts programming. So we want to just express our gratitude to the sponsors, and of course to all the teachers who are here for days installing these beautiful exhibits. I hope if you haven't had a chance to see them, you'll see the exhibits today, because we've just got till the 26th.
Yes.
To run our exhibit. So I just want to introduce Anne. I think probably everybody knows Anne.
Yeah, I think
Hi,
everybody.
You probably know that she's a full-time professor of art and design at North Central Michigan College. She's co-owner of Bear Creek Farm, and of course Bear Creek Farm was really hit hard with this storm, and they really rallied.
Yes,
and pulling it together. So we'll have those microgreens and all that amazing healthy food.
Yeah.
She's an active member of the Northern Michigan community, serving on many boards, including Crooked Tree Art Center. For how many years has it been, Anne?
Since 2015. So 10 years.
2015. So we've been working with Anne for a long time. Who does amazing work with exhibitions and education and executive team. It has done everything.
Yeah.
She holds a BFA from the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design and an MS from Indiana University. Anne is an amazing educator. I've been so fortunate to work with Anne, exploring ideas for exhibitions and on education, and have been invited a couple times to come and do portfolio reviews, which I'm looking forward to doing again. And Anne is really an extraordinary educator. I think when teaching is an art form, it's performance art, it's curriculum development is an art form. It's like a interactive art form. Like, how do you design experiences and opportunities and investigations for students that are really going to tap into their creativity, give them confidence, and go forward? And Anne is exemplary in her creativity as a teacher. So I'm so excited that she's here to share that with us today. And I'm just really grateful for all the contributions that Anne makes to Crooked Tree, all that she's done for us. So,
well, thank you, Sheila. Thank you. Yay. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to get rid of, because I don't teach behind a pedestal. So sometimes I'm behind a desk because we're doing some, follow along and I'll show you where to click type of deal. But yeah, so I don't know when I really found that I enjoyed teaching. If I think back, it really started probably in high school, and my high school art teacher always would kind of have me show my work as an example. And I always was kind of a little nervous about that in high school. You're like, oh gosh, everybody's looking at my stuff. And I didn't think I was that good and all these things. But through that experience, I was really able to start feeling connected to other artists or other creatives. And then I was very active in sports. Basketball was my big one. And so that kind of gave me the sort of leadership and sort of this idea of like the team mindset. And so these are really two big deals to what drove me, I think, when it came time to sort of say to myself, realistically, what is it that I'm meant to do? And I think education just always had been there. So I want to ask you all a question. And I want you to imagine that you are back in kindergarten. It's your very first art class ever in like a K-12 type situation. Probably you've created things at home. Probably things went up on your refrigerator or your walls, or your parents told you how wonderful you were, just like all of us. So I think all of us have shared that experience. But when you're confronted by your very first art teacher, draw the Mona Lisa, I mean, how horrifying that you could never. It's setting you up for failure. And I think that when we think about art education and how to teach others to be creative, there's a real sense of making sure that we are sort of protecting that creativity that students come in with, and how we can help to build it in a safer space coming from that individual and not trying to match what others have done. Certainly not the masters. This was a real situation that happened in grad school. I was, I was a TA all through undergrad because it was a way to make money. I was an RA all through undergrad because it was a way to have housing and make money. So I kind of just did it out of necessity because I was like, yeah, no, like I enjoy this. I enjoy being kind of like on a team and also helping other young artists who are coming to the same art school I was at make their way. I get to grad school and I was like, yeah, I want to learn about the business side of the arts. That's why I don't have an MFA. I started out with an MA in arts. Oh my goodness, what was the name of it? Arts administration, and for nonprofits and that kind of thing. But then I quickly learned that I actually was more interested in the business side of the arts for the creative industry, or for the entertainment industry. So anyway, I was taking a class that was readings and research in art education. And I felt very out of water with this class. I was in there with people getting their masters in arts education. I was in there with PhD students doing arts education, arts administration. And so here I am, this BFA student right out of undergrad, and all of these older people who clearly knew what they were doing. And this was a prompt, a real prompt that my professor, then professor, gave us. She split us up into groups, and she said, develop a lesson plan where you're going to have kindergartners draw the Mona Lisa. And I think that because it's such a core memory for me, was kind of when I determined, I don't think that I'm not interested in arts education. I don't think I was just doing it for money. I think I have a real issue with how our arts education curriculum has been designed from the ground up, starting in kindergarten. It's no wonder that people feel like, I don't know how to draw. I can't draw. I'm not creative, because you immediately go back to thinking from a very young age, you weren't able. So that then launched me, and I sort of, in that class, I actually stuck. It was so amazing to me how the other people in my group were so like, yeah, we could like show them the Mona Lisa, and we could do this and do that, and then they can try and do it themselves. And I was like, am I the only one who sings the pink elephant over there? There's no way that this is healthy. And so I basically stood my ground, and everybody was like horrified. And even my professor didn't quite know what to do with me because I was challenging the whole thing. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And it was like they didn't know what to do with it. So I, at that point, went back to the classes at that point that I was a TA for, and I really made sure to think about things that I had taken away from undergrad. And from there, I started to develop this different method, or this different approach to how I teach. And I'll come back to K-12 in a minute. But there were different things that were said to us all the way through art school, like once you're out of art school, you're never going to have another honest critique. Like nobody will know how to give you a critique. So take advantage of it now, because you're never going to be in a room full of artists ever again, going through exactly what you're going through in these trenches. And I didn't take that seriously at the time. I mean, none of us did, right? Like you can probably think back to when you were going through your education, and maybe you had a similar thing said to you, and you're like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. I'll be fine. I'm going to keep these friends forever, and I can always reach out to them. And well, obviously that doesn't happen. So when you think about, providing students with a sense of understanding how to critique in the first place, all of the sudden the ability to kind of look introspectively at the work you're creating becomes a little bit more easy. And you're able to communicate with others in a unique way, or in a tactile way that is going to allow you to sort of build yourself up. So building into grad school and the TA-ship I did there, I started thinking about communicating the information to the students in a way that they're going to understand. And in order to do that, I really had to speak their language. Luckily, I had just done undergrad, so when I have 60 students in this class where they're learning video production, but it's really just the theory of video production and I have to get them excited, I showed them things like Looney Tunes, and I showed them things like, the singing scene Bette Midler did in, Hocus Pocus. And I used these and like even Friday Night Lights and all of these other things that were relevant of that time. And the students are sitting there going, why are you, like, it was so different than how the main professor was teaching. And yet I was taking this risk because I knew that I knew how to communicate with them. And I knew that I was in a room full of creatives, even if they had been told in kindergarten, you don't know how to draw the Mona Lisa, or they felt that way. I knew in this moment I could get them to see something that they watch anyway and still draw some of the educational moments away. And from there, they're going to stick with those things. They're going to be embedded in such a way that they can relate it back to their own life. I'm speaking to them on their terms. So connectivity is really the key here, honestly. And so it's interesting to me because I've never really thought of the way that I teach as a different way. I guess I've always been like, oh, like, I don't know how to teach. Like, I've never taken, like, other than the readings and research class, I had never taken a class in how to be a teacher. And when it comes to like creating a lesson plan, I'm like, I mean, I have no idea. And so, but you kind of fake it till you make it. So at the college, when I started being an adjunct professor and I was teaching art history, and then they were like, oh, by the way, we've always wanted to teach animation, but we've never had anybody who can do that. And I was like, well, I know how to animate. Sure, I can do that. And so I was like, I've never written a master course syllabi before, but I don't need to tell them that. I can just fake it till I make it. So what did I do? I took out all of the master course syllabi that I kept, because for whatever reason, I think deep down I knew that I was interested in teaching. I kept all of it from undergrad. So the teacher that I had, who, by the way, I just have to brag a little, she was a first generation Ollie Johnston student. How many of you know who Ollie Johnston is? He is one of the original 9 old men of Disney who developed the 12 principles of animation, who sort of set the standards for animation today, the standards that everybody follows around the world. So I am a second generation Ollie Johnston student, meaning all of my students who go through my program are third generation. And this is a really big deal because she taught me the way that he taught her. And he's like a legit, like he's responsible for Cinderella. I mean, like all of the Sleeping Beauty, all of them. So anyway, so pulling that into kind of how I teach is like, well, I didn't really like how Molly did this or that. Don't tell her though, she's very intimidating. She's like this tall, very intimidating. But I love her a lot. I changed up what she had done. I did what I thought made a little more sense, and understanding, by the way, who are my students up here? They're very different than students that were with me at art school. I have to meet them where they are. I have to understand what is going to draw them in enough to sort of let their inhibitions go and trust that I'm going to protect them through this educational process. So I can push them in an uncomfortable way and totally change how the classroom functions. And at this point in my career, I can say that, because I've been teaching essentially in some capacity since I've been 18, and I'm 39 now. So this is a while now. And I guess for me, if you ask any of the students that I've had, like I have had them come back from the schools that they've went to after North Central, and they're like, oh my gosh, you will not believe the amount that I learned from you. And I don't feel like I really learned much after. And I'm like, that can't be true. I mean, because you're going to like these prestigious schools, like how can that be true? But then they point to all these things and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I take that information and expand on it and make myself better. But my past experience should inform and not show. So what I mean by that is my experience is absolutely not their experience. So I can't teach them the way that was best for me. I have to find the way that the students experience the classroom, and it's not about me. So I can give them examples for example. But I need to kind of tweak some of that language. So through education, I'm not lying, but I am kind of embellishing certain points in order to drive home a different scenario in their case. They're going to believe you if you believe them first. You have to trust that they can do it. And if you never trust them to create or to approach a design challenge ever, then if you never like give them the opportunity to flourish, they're never going to prove to you that they can. And so you have to make them uncomfortable. You have to keep yourself out of it. That's the design part, because we can come back to designers and fine artists. But and then the trust is going to yield the results. And so the students will show you what they want to learn, and they'll show you how they're interpreting the information. And then it's my job as the artist. Here I am back in the critique mode. You'll never be in a room full of creatives again. You'll never have that opportunity. Well, yes, I do. Every time a student turns in an assignment, I see exactly where the flaws are in my lesson plan, and I can adapt that for later, and I can make it better. If I don't like the overall results that I'm seeing, it's not the student's fault. It's not that they didn't understand it. I just didn't do a good enough job teaching it. So that's my art form. That's how I can inform myself. And by that, I then can inform them. So building resilience is going to result in that high confidence that you have to have in order to be successful in the field. The number of students that I have, even in this small community here of Northern Michigan, the number of students that I have coming in to this community college who want so desperately to be a professional artist, well, let's get you there. And here's what you got to do. And I can definitely say that the other faculty have a similar approach. We're different in how our deliveries are, but we're very similar in that, is like we all believe that our students can do it. So they're not just getting it in my classroom, they're getting it from the others as well. So the other faculty and I also collaborate a lot, and we find ways that we can sort of build these things in to all of our curriculum so that we can be consistent on certain levels, but our own individuals in our own classrooms and creative in those ways. A quick bit in like the fine art versus design realm. I mean, again, going to an art school, you really like saw it mostly from the faculty. They weren't very good at hiding how they felt about one another. And we were separated by floors. So illustration was up on the 4th floor. They were so high and mighty. You had industrial design, which nationally was recognized as one of the top in the nation constantly in the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, the industrial design program, and the communication design program are both like pretty high up there. Illustration is as well. But yeah, so they were all on the 1st floor, and interior architecture design was on that floor, but sculpture was at the other end. They were at the other end. And communication design was on one end, animation was in the middle, and then photography was on the other end. So it's like they don't understand. So what you have going on is you have this idea of the ego. And this is also really important to keep in mind too, because when you're talking about being an educator, you are designing. You just are. You have to figure out, how can I get my students to understand all of these course learning outcomes? Like, this is not fun. And I don't care who you are, even the people who are at the like top of the level of the education, whatever, who determine all of these like learning outcomes, and like they force these standards and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, have you ever been in an art school? Have you ever been in an art class? Ever? I don't know. Now, I can't really speak to the standards for like the other areas, right? Like math, science, those are very different. But in the art area, that's not as simple as it sounds. And I also understand, not to go on this tangent, but like, how are we going to universally make it so that we can make sure every student's hitting all these things? Like, I get all that, okay? Like, I understand it's not as simple. But what I am saying is, no matter what we're doing, we're not meeting students where they are, and that's the problem. So we need to really rethink this. But the way that you do that is by taking your ego out of it. You have to be a designer. Designers are not allowed to have an ego. You have to check it at the door. It's all about the client and the customer. And who's the customer? It's not the teachers. The customer is the students. So you have to be able to meet them, not the faculty. And I think that that's something that we really get wrong a lot of the time. And so fine artists are much more about like the self. And I don't mean that like in a selfish way, because I'm a fine artist who can design. I'm not a designer inherently. I have to like train myself to do that. And you can ask Brian to prove it, because we butt heads a lot, because I'm ultimately a fine artist and I want it to be my way. But he's right, like it should be how the customers need it to be. And I'm like, yeah, but it looks prettier this way. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, so fine artists and designers hit heads because they just don't have the same outlook, and that's okay. You have to have both, because you can't be a fine artist without design, and you can't design without understanding the fine art side. And what I'm really speaking to is the self and understanding the self. But how can you understand yourself if you haven't been taught to do it? So building the foundation, again, meeting students where they are, challenges that are relevant. This is where, again, even I can say that like I am sort of outdated in some of my classes. And so I try to change it on the fly. And because of how I teach, I can kind of do that a little bit more. I can maneuver. And just as a point of reference, last week, I now have to completely change all of my finals, and we're going to do it on the fly like we did during COVID. And that's, you know, how it is. But got to meet students where they are. So challenges that are relevant. I'm not going to give a communication designer a project that isn't something that they're going to see in the real world. Maybe I'm going to give them a project that doesn't necessarily feel relevant in that it's just a brochure. Like, who needs a brochure? But like, everybody needs a brochure. Because even though it seems so antiquated, it's like, just go online, do everything online. It's like, but not everybody's there. And by the way, we're still human. We all love the tactile nature of it. So you have to be able to do that. It's not the most fun. It's not the most like crazy looking or whatever. Sometimes it's extremely functional, but form follows function in the design world. And so even for this project here, you know, I oftentimes will tell people at the college, like, hey, any department, we will happily collaborate with you, because the students have to experience what it's like to have a client, even just for that exchange. So what I used to do in communication design for the final is I would have the students pair up with a faculty or staff member, and they would be interviewing them. And so we would talk about how to interview clients in order to extract the information you need to best design for that person. So we get into branding, we get into identity, we get into all that fun stuff. And it's fun because I tell the staff or faculty when I invite them, I sort of curate it and make sure I have a good variety. And then I say, you know, think of anything that you would want to do. If you're not allowed to work in higher education, what is one thing that you want to be like for your career? Like, what would you do if you could do anything? Like, you could be a magician, or you could be a like sorceress, or you could be like a dragon. Like, I don't know, what do you want to be? And I have had my dean wanted to be a dragon. And so the student, she met with him, and he turned her into a dragon. He took her photo. He used Photoshop to make her look all scaled. It was beautiful. It was the cover of a magazine that made sense. And then there was a center spread where he took more photos and had to lay out the whole thing. This is him integrating and focusing so much more on the end result rather than, oh man, I have to use Photoshop. It's like, that's not where we're stopping. We're actually stopping at, no, you have to deliver something that could actually be printed. And by the way, you have to get it printed. And I teach you to spray mount it so that it's a proper presentation board. And then you deliver that to your client, who is, by the way, the Dean of Liberal Studies. So no pressure. But I did have Cameron Burnett Cook, if any of you are familiar with her. She did this process way back when I first started doing it. She was one of the first people I asked. And she really wanted to be a toll taker on the bridge. I had no idea. She's like, I've always thought that that'd be fun. Maybe when I retire, that's what I'll do. I was like, that's so cool. And so I made sure to match her up with a student who lived in the UP so that they had that kind of connection. The student drives it all the time. So, you know, things like that. So this student, I collaborated with the natural area committee, and it was the biology professor. And basically all the students got the same prompt. They had to redesign because there's a need in the natural area at the college for new signage. It needs to be better. It needs to be updated. And so basically we met with the committee. They gave us all of their hopes, all their dreams. They then took it and I helped them work through the process of like, okay, how do you take all that information and how do you like zero in on it? So I don't give them the answer. I tell them, you have to look at the notes you took. If they weren't good enough, then you're going to have to talk to your other designers and be like, all right, what am I missing here? And so that collaboration, that teamwork, that idea of being in a creative space allows you to kind of flex those muscles. This was the selected design. This student, she was phenomenal in every way in every single project, so I wasn't surprised that hers was chosen. They all had to print, spray mount, bring their presentation boards to the biology classroom where they had to present to 2 different biology classes, not just the committee. And so everybody voted. And so these students are sitting there with their designs being voted on, and they know this, and they had like 4 weeks to do it. And so this student was selected, and actually she was an intern here last summer. And she's at Purdue for UI UX, which is user interface, user design, or user experience. And so that's what she's doing. And so it makes sense that she thought of this. And so there's the branding piece we had to make sure we got on there. So is it the most like fun project she's ever done? Probably not. But at the same time, it's functional. It met the need of a customer, a client. And by the way, this all got printed and is currently up. So if you walk the trails, you will see her design. So how amazing is that? What a great portfolio piece. So definitely giving relevant challenges and like what pumps me up and what are things that I like to learn, probably they're going to like to learn similar things. And so if I can figure out what that is, I can do that. I knew she was into UI UX. I knew that another student wanted to go into more of like editorial type stuff. So I knew she wasn't necessarily going to be as into it, but it's still a good challenge for her, even though that's not necessarily the direction she wants to go. So again, like there's differences there, but you build in and you hide and you integrate lessons so that the students don't see them. They get intimidated by it. Draw the Mona Lisa. That's intimidating. But if you say, draw a woman and like, or a man, but like draw a woman who looks like they're smiling but are not smiling. And like if you gave that prompt to the students, if you gave them the like basis of what the Mona Lisa is, and then after they do it, show them another one, like let them sort of look at each other's stuff, then show them the Mona Lisa. Now all of a sudden they're not comparing themselves entirely to did I do what they did, but it's like, look, even way back, this guy over here who actually considers himself a scientist, not an artist, he actually also did a woman who you can't tell if she's smiling or not. Do you think she's smiling or not? Now all of a sudden you can start that conversation. They had the experience, they can relate. It's easy. So they don't realize they're applying things when you embed it in and make it and sort of get it in there so that they're out of necessity, out of the problem solving is how they're applying these things because they're so focused on what it is you've asked them to create. This is especially helpful in classes like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, which those of you who don't know, those are computer programs as part of the Adobe Creative Suite that basically every designer ever uses. Canva is another one that a lot of people use because they don't know Adobe. Great, there are limitations. I have my own opinion, but I'm glad that it exists for people who don't necessarily have the education because you should still be able to express yourself creatively and get information out there to the people you're trying to reach. However, when you're learning Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, it's a very intimidating interface. And had I had more time, I started this slideshow a couple months ago, actually, when Sheila first asked me. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'll just keep writing notes down and I'll come back to it like, you know, over spring break or the week before, and I'll make sure to flesh it out. Well, so this is a very limited slideshow. I would have for you the like a screenshot of what Illustrator and InDesign and Photoshop look like. They look very similar, but they're very different. And when you look at the interface, you know, there's lots of comparisons I make when I teach it because a lot of students have never used a Mac before. gonna lie, like it's not, you know, or whatever. And so what I often would do is I would go around on the first day and I would basically say, okay, why are you here? And I want you to be as honest, as brutally honest as possible. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And more than half the class every single time, well, I have to have it to graduate. Have to have it to graduate. I was like, okay. I was like, how many of you have ever taken an art class? And there always are, because the artists are in there to do that. But even they're kind of in there going like, I don't get to like make anything. I just have to sit here and there's writing and whatever. It's like, okay, I'm going to make this really fun for all of you. And you're going to figure out that art actually impacts your life every single day. And every time I taught it, students always ended with the only question on their final was, why does art matter? That was it. They had to just explain it, and it was up to them to show me how it mattered. And what I did for the midterm is I would do an interview, a one-on-one interview for like 23 students. It was very hard to coordinate, but we did it. And it was like an hour for each student. And I basically sat there and I knew what every single one of them were going into for their program of study. And so I would cater the questions to them every single time. The coolest one I ever had, and it was like an hour for them to sort like an oral exam. They basically had to explain to me how it impacted their program of study. And they had to defend why it did. So for over half of them, they don't actually believe that art impacts their program of study, right? Like I'm not totally insane. But in that process, every single one of them had prepared for this oral exam. And it's terrifying. You have to sit in there with me, like I'm asking you these questions. I don't think I'm that scary, but like that's the thing I was told last semester is that not me, but like my projects are terrifyingly difficult because they're so open-ended. And so here they are in this interview with me, and I'm basically like, okay, so you want to be a pharmacist. So I'm curious, what are the compounds that make up aspirin? And so I would try to find questions that they could answer, but then from there, I could start to tailor it to like, can you point to any time in human history when there were other people developing products or developing recipes that impacted the art world? And this one student, I will never forget, he was so like grumpy every single week. I don't think it was me. I think that was just him, but he wanted to be a pharmacist. And he went on and 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 on about the Bronze Age. And I was like, oh my gosh, like brilliant, right? Because all of that alchemy that they were doing to come up with bronze, and it resonated so much with him. And he was like, wow. And so I now know forevermore, this student will always look back at art history as being like, well, I may not know any of the dates of work and blah, 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 but I can point to the Bronze Age and tell you exactly how, because of that period of time in human history, I'm now able to be a pharmacist. And to me, I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. So like mind blown. So it's just these different ways. This was all done digitally. So digital painting through Illustrator. And this student, I mean, they had to do a bowl of fruit and they had to do it all from scratch. And so I taught them how to do the different, I'm blanking on it right now, the gradient meshes, and you have to like apply to every single anchor point and you can make more anchor points. It's like basically a wire armature digital, and you go through and you select them all and you apply color. She had only ever been a painter. She had never taken this was her first digital class that she had taken. And she was incredible. And she just did it. And I was like, it's unbelievable. It's breathtaking. And from afar, you'd never even really know until you get up and you're like, oh, it's a painting. And you're like, well, kind of. Kind of, it's a painting. And then, you know, photography is another fun one always as well. So yeah, I mean, I guess like when I break it all down, and I've never, again, really, I've always kind of felt, if I'm being completely honest, like I've always kind of felt like I'm up here in what's that called when you're like lying to everyone. But like I know how to, you said what? Yeah, I feel like I have imposter syndrome. That's exactly, yeah. So I've always felt like this imposter, but then everywhere around me, I'm like, no, like anytime I was a TA, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't really agree. I think that, but I'd have to just let it go. And even with Molly, my incredible animation teacher, yeah, she did an incredible job with all of us. She developed all of us, and we were the first group to go through that program at MyAd. And so there was a lot of like guinea pig nature to that. But she did an amazing job. And so I think that like from learning from her, just how to like, and being part of the first ever program and all these different experiences and moments that I'm just like, it's not clicking. And then for me to be like, awesome, I was just hired as an adjunct for North Central. I know art history. I'm sure I can deliver it in teaching. And I'll just tell, like, yeah, I've taught, I've been a TA, I can do it. And it was terrifying because I was like, oh my gosh, students know that I don't know what I'm talking about, even though I do. But then I just saw their faces light up and they gained so much interest. And it just kept me motivated to be like, how can I keep sort of changing what the classroom is, and how can I really get students to care about what they're doing and empower them to be able to actually learn instead of just being sort of like thrown stuff and they just have to keep consuming it. I mean, that works in some ways, but not in all. And so I soon sort of figured out that I don't know that I'm an imposter. I think I just have a different method, and I actually think it works better. So that's how I've gotten to where I'm at. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, or I don't know. Yeah.
Is meeting the students where they are.
Yeah.
You have some strategies that you use in order to do that.
Yeah. It's not an easy path. So there is a little bit of like, I'm bending a lot in some cases where I have to sort of, once I can gauge the group and I can kind of see like, all right, what are our skill levels? I'll be honest, there are times where I'm like, ugh, like this is going to be tough because the talent's not there. So to keep it interesting for myself, I have to sort of figure out like, okay, do I just change all the projects? How do I change my expectations so that I can make sure that they are getting better for themselves? So that has happened quite a lot. Again, like I have very talented students who come through North Central, and I also get a lot of students who just aren't. But that doesn't mean that they don't have potential. And so for me, I just have to remember like, this is not an art school. I have to like tamper that down, and I have to really be realistic. So that's kind of where I start. And then from there, I need them to bend too. So what I do many times, if I feel like a student isn't delivering, I wait and see like how I can, this is where the sports side of me comes out and the like coaches yelling in my face and like that whole experience I had in life. I kind of come out and I can be more aggressive with some of them if I know that I need to be. And I'm just like, you're not doing what you can do. And I'll say that softer to some and more aggressively to others, but that's kind of where I have to do it on like a one-on-one basis. And I'll be honest, I have a student right now who is part of the basketball team, and I basically was like, you got to get your shit together. I just had to like straight up be, and he's like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, okay. And I sort of, I get it to a point where I'm not like guilting all of them, but I kind of put it on them. I'm like, look, like you're paying me to teach you. Like this is on you if you aren't putting in the effort. And, or if it's a student who I'm like, I know you like anime, but if you want to go anywhere in life, you have to have your own point of view. And I want that for you. Do you want that for you? And I just have to give them that control. And if they want to, then great. And if they don't, then I can say, well, did you improve? Or are you still just totally regurgitating what it is that's in front of you, which is what that whole thing. Anyway, we don't have to go into anime, but I get a lot of that. But anyway, because there are values in it where it's like, use it as inspiration. You know, I try to give them tactics. So meeting them where they're at is really hard sometimes. And other times it's very easy. And it's like a dream. I'm like, oh, like this is, and I will say too, I know that the work that students produce is better than what they produced students in that I was in school with, better than my work for sure. And that makes me both feel, again, very competitive, but it also makes me feel, because I'm like, if I did this project, but but then it also really makes me feel proud because I'm like, wow, like I pulled that out of them. Like I showed them how to pull that out of themselves, you know? And so that's the other thing. And exactly. That's 100% how I'm an art director. That's how I look at it. It's not just the education that comes with it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Challenges of AI.
I knew that was coming. Yeah. um, so I'll be honest, again, like the first sentence of my senior thesis at MIAD is I am a Luddite. So even though I work in the digital space and I'm an animator and all those things, I'm still a Luddite. I really prefer the tactile things. So for me, when AI first started kind of emerging, I was very like, my gut reaction was like, absolutely not, protective, blah, blah, blah. But then I had to remind myself, no, like these students, there's a little bit of like this game that I play sometimes, and I can still get away with it because they all think I'm younger than I am. And so I can kind of like, you know, be chill with them or whatever you want to, whatever they say. I can't do all this skibbity, blah, blah, blah. I don't know all that, but I can at least relate to them on a level of like, hey, look, you want to try to get one over on me? Go right on ahead. But is that actually, but my question to you is that actually teaching you anything? And I said, now I get it. Sometimes you're going to have weeks where you just are at your max and you can't like put in the effort. So you may create something in AI and you may try to turn that in, and more than likely, because my projects are pretty bulletproof, you can't do AI because I have so many things coming in. It would be pretty impossible to do. But at the same time, I know that I've gotten it. And I've talked to the English faculty as well, and I can speak to that a little bit as well. But ultimately, I just, again, put it right back on them. What are you actually getting out of it? And then I kind of say, and we have a discussion about it. I oftentimes will say, you know, how do all of you feel about AI? And more often than not, at least the art students are all like, ugh, because they all feel the tension of this is going to take my job someday. So they all feel that, and it's real. We have a similar conversation with photography because it's so accessible, and it's like, how do you rise past, not above, but like, how do you separate yourself from the fact that everyone in the entire world is taking photos, multiple photos every day? And so anyway, that's a different conversation, but I really feel like just putting it onto the students and saying, hey, if you choose to do this, you are cheating. Let's just call it what it is. It's black and white. But is it cheating if you're the one who's the creative informing the AI of what you want them to do? That all of a sudden becomes a design challenge. So to me, I'm like, well, that's exciting. So then I kind of say to them like, okay, it's okay for you to be aggressively against it. I agree with you from a practice standpoint. I said, but from the classroom standpoint, why wouldn't you use it? And then I kind of get them to think about both sides. And then all of a sudden I can sort of integrate this idea of like, but what if you used AI to give you ideas? That all of a sudden becomes a resource, and it's not it doing it for you. And then what if you tell it like, okay, to expedite the process, I want AI to create like the texture for the background that I'm then going to use, and I'm going to change the colors, and I'm going to take that and adapt it. Now you're creating work, and now you're designing. So I try to give them an opportunity to sort of express their concern. Then I give them the opportunity to kind of see, well, this could also benefit me. And then I kind of look at it like, okay, then let's put it into the curriculum a little bit and kind of see where you go with it. I think that in the art world, the reality is, and I kind of, you know, rest assured for all of them that there's no way the AI is going to take over the creative side. It just can't. Designers won't let it. And the people, like, first of all, everybody, when AI became available, is like, oh, everybody's using it, testing it out. It's funny. It's fun to create those images. That's going to go away. Those are the early adopters. Those are not the early majority. So you're going to have this early majority who start to look at it, and those are oftentimes going to be the designers who are a little bit more cavalier, like, yeah, like, let's use this, and I'm going to do this and that. And they're going to test it out in those boundaries. Then you're going to get to the people who are like the sort of like majority. And they're going to kind of say like, well, we don't like that and we don't like that. The uncanny valley is very real. And it is harder to see what things are real and what things are not. And that is becoming a problem. But at the same time, like designers are going to be the ones, it like stops with them. They're not going to let it go past a certain point. And that's why like Adobe, you can feel how you want. It's basically the Disney of the design world, but they own everything. You can't get around it. But Canva's great for that reason. I personally don't want to use it because it's very limiting, and I don't actually feel like I can get my creative self through it. But other people can use it, and that's great. So it's allowing people to be creative. So I don't know if that fully answers, but that's a hard one. And I think that for the English faculty, they're really trying to navigate it, but a lot of them are going back to handwriting and saying, you know, first day, here's a prompt, I want you to just write, so that they can get a sense of here's how you write. Then, you know, some of them are saying, okay, go ahead and use AI, but it better start sounding like you. You can't just do it and not correct it. Like, so there's ways that you can, as a creative, because that's another creative outlet, there's ways you can benefit from it too, because it is a tool. So, yeah.
Okay, we can have lunch, breakfast, dinner, sit down,
I
have
know.
a conversation forever on this. So many things. I want to go back to when you said some of your students come in and they don't have the talent.
They don't.
And
Yeah.
I just want to comment how fortunate they are to be a part of this process, because I firmly believe all students from the very beginning up need to be exposed to programs that value creativity,
Yes.
problem solving, critical thinking, and I think that can, and I know it can be done
Yes.
across the full curriculum, not just in the arts. So,
Mhm.
so those students are getting a valuable experience, even if they won't be focused on the creative end of
Mhm.
their art in the future. They'll take what they learn from that, and you're making a difference in their lives. And then just think about your art history class and this guy who's the pharmacist who's taking that with him every day. I wish we could have a class like that everyone
I
has
know.
the opportunity. It wouldn't have to be art history, but maybe it does. I don't know, but something where they take that and they experience it and they bring that art into their own lives
Yeah.
that way and carry it forward, because we need in our world people who are passionate, people who are creative, people who are problem solvers, people who get how important the arts are for everything. And we can take arts way broad, like
Oh, yeah.
writing,
Oh, yeah.
natural,
Theater.
so many things.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, so I just.
No, I completely agree with you. And I loved teaching art history because I loved learning it the way I did, because I liked, you know, having my art history professors who had their MFAs in art history and whatever. And that's not really necessarily a thing anymore. I think people do, but it's less likely. A lot of it is shifting to philosophy even, and anthropology and history in general. But the one thing about teaching art history was like, I just kind of said to myself, well, I mean, the master course syllabi just says they have to learn these things. It's not saying they have to memorize dates. Who wants to memorize dates? I mean, even the like, I don't even know all the dates. I know the movements, but I can put them in order, but like, I don't remember all the dates of everything. And like, that's ridiculous. There's so much more important information within art history alone that is more than just the dates. So let's get the students caring about how that helped develop human history. And the first thing that I do, and now I've shifted it from art history to communication design because it still is a thing there. What I did on the very first day of art history is I sort of do this awkward like shuffling of papers, and I'm kind of like pacing around deliberately because I'm just like, oh my gosh, and like let them all see me frantic. And then I'm like, can I have like 2 people help me out real quick? And then inevitably 2 people who are going to be the ones who are more open to what I'm about to explain. They actually will come up and I hand them a piece of paper and they start reading it. Both of them are almost identical. And it says, from this point forward, you are not allowed to talk. You have to communicate with the other person, but you only understand head nods and grunts, and you don't understand hand movements. You only understand hand movements and you don't understand grunts and head nods. And so then here's the information you have to convey to the other person. And so they're like, yeah, I'll help you. Like, what? And then they read it and they're just like, oh my God. And so then they all like always look at me and I'm just like, like, I don't know, good luck. And then I don't talk. And then the rest of the class is like, what's going on? And then the two of them kind of like look at each other awkwardly. And then inevitably, what happens is they go to the whiteboard and they grab a marker. Oh, and I also say you're not allowed to use symbols or numbers or letters or anything like that. So what do? They go up to the board and they start thinking, how am I gonna? And so they start drawing essentially symbols because that is what most images are. But I meant like no hearts, no arrows, none of that. And so I let it go like 40 minutes because I'm pretty brutal. But in doing that, you end up with an entire cave painting on the wall. And that is where we're starting. And when you can experience a very realistic playing out of what it probably was like, then all of a sudden you can start the conversation of why did they do this? What were they trying to convey? And now when you go to show them the slides, because you do have to show them, you know, Spain and all these places. Rhinoceroses in Spain, I just don't understand what was happening. But you like go in and you like start showing them, and then all of a sudden the students are like, oh, and then it's like that awkward, like, how did we communicate? It's insane. We communicated with imagery. And why were we doing it? We were doing it because we want to relate to one another. Education's no different. Everybody's coming in without understanding how to communicate. And so they need to end the semester or whenever the class ends. They need to understand these fundamental things. And so how can you orchestrate that? And how can you give them very pointed moments? And so the other thing I would do in art history is for one of the projects is they had to pick a film out of 4. They could watch Disney's Hercules, they could watch Troy, they could watch Gladiator, or they could watch, what was the other one? I did Ice Age one time, that wasn't as good. I tried to do like 2 animations, 2 live actions. And their whole reason for having to like watch a movie is they have to actually go through and they have to figure out what was art historically accurate and what wasn't. And then they had to like write the comparison of that. And so it was sort of great to see they were watching a movie. So it's fun, you have to watch a movie. But then you actually have to think about like, Gladiator was kind of like, they didn't have crossbows, but here they are, you know. And so it's fascinating to get them to sort of think through the thought process, I guess. Yeah. But making it relatable and making them sort of feel that because it's not, they're coming in like on a level where it's like, oh, yikes. But that doesn't mean that they don't have potential. So then I just have to sort of show them that they do. And then it's not my job to get them out there, but I can at least give them power and improvement and strength in what they do, you know? So that's kind of my attitude.
The other thing that really stands out to me is what fabulous teachers you have.
Yes.
That help you to see by their example what you could be and let you become who you were. And we have an elementary teacher up in our area who I've got to know a little bit. And his building is run that way. So
awesome.
You have
it's
elementary
awesome.
teachers
yeah.
who are empowered with the art of teaching.
Yeah.
And not just the art program, which is fabulous,
yes.
but across the board.
That's awesome.
His teachers, and he gets it. So because he gets it, they get to be the best teachers they can be.
Which is awesome.
And you know,
yeah.
I had instructors when I was deciding whether I wanted to teach or not. Had I not had those instructors, I would not have become a teacher because
definitely not.
they were the teachers who who empowered me to be
Mhm.
creative. And so it needs to happen everywhere, not just in the arts.
Yeah, yeah,
So, yeah.
I agree. I agree completely. Yeah. I don't know.
Any more?
Any other questions? Thank you. Yeah.
That
You
was
can do- Good. Thank you. Yeah.
And for all the work you do, I have
Yeah.
to say, when I taught high school portfolio last year, I had a student that took Anne's character design
Oh, yeah.
class, which was amazing. She was a student who didn't have many drawing skills and was
She was great.
drawing figures in rotation. But I want to say one thing about it, and this is where, through this student, I learned a little bit more about Anne's curriculum, other than just working together with Anne here. And that is that when Anne says her projects are really open-ended, there is so much scaffolding to get them to that space
Yeah.
of like, no, but then they have the resources
Oh,
to
yeah.
do it. So with Anne's character design, and you can see work just out
Mhm.
here in the youth art show, just outside the door, there's a little wall of Anne's character design student work. But Anne starts with, when you look at those, you see how thoroughly developed the characters are. And you're like, well, where does that come from? Anne gives them a worksheet that explores the depths, this character, like,
It's a whole one-page
Which
thing.
things
Oh,
are-
yeah. So it's basically like, what's their archetype, which they learn what a character archetype is. There's like 12 of them. And then like their name, their age, their family members, their educational, like where's their education at? Like, did they not go to school? Do they have a PhD, whatever? And then there's like favorite food, favorite color. Do they have any pets? What's their pet peeve? If they were to walk into a room, what would be their anthem? Like, what would the song be? And it's like, what's their deepest fear? What's their deepest passion? What are they most afraid of? Like these different things. And then like the character hook is at the bottom because you have to have a hook. And part of the like generalization is like, yeah, they're so open-ended. Again, like I am so excited anytime I can make them even more open-ended because you get better results. But the only thing the students have to stand on are the foundations you're trying to teach them, which is the elements and principles of design, which is Gestalt principles, which is blah, blah, blah. I mean, all these things that you're trying, and like character principles, like you have to get them to use those things. So if you strip everything away, all the noise, and you just say, create a graphic novel with 2 characters, and here's their storyline, like one of the 7 plot lines, like voyage and return. It's like, what? And that's what all these are, is like the graphic novel, the 2 characters, and then randomly they have to choose like an era, a setting, and like for the characters, they have to have like a role and then their job. So like their archetype essentially, and then like what's their role. So you could have like a taking place in 3010, and then so it's like way futuristic. And then it's like you have it's like an underwater on planet Saturn. And then like you have a mad professor, or like a gone mad professor who's like a orologist. And then you have like a sidekick that's a farm animal. And like, how in the world do you put those things together? And all you have to go off of are those character sheets and all those foundational principles. And the rest is up to you. Media is up to you. I give you the pages and you just have to do it. And so in order to just do it, you can only rely on your own creativity and what you've learned in the semester. And that's it.
And it is amazing
raw.
because I saw the
great.
student
Oh,
during
she
the course
did.
of the
She
semester really
grew.
emerged.
She
and
grew a
it was
lot.
great. And she ended up going to art school.
Yes,
art
which
college.
is awesome.
This is
very
a high
talented.
school program,
Yeah.
at NCMC, the high school students. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yes.
we love what you're doing, Anne.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad people like it.
So before you go, I just want to tell you a couple things. We are going to have an Art of Nature talk, copy at 10 next week. And then Jim Beckering, who's an art teacher at Boyne City High School, is going to have an interesting talk about how to balance, how to create balance in life between being an art teacher, being an artist, and being a parent, and also I think he has a few part-time jobs too.
Yeah, I
so
was gonna
it's
say, I think he
like
does.
it's
I think he
like
does.
Energizer
He
bunnies
does.
that
Yes.
to
We
keep
just go
going.
and
So,
go. He
thank
actually
you for
took
our
my animation class the first time I ever taught it.
support.
Yeah. So yeah, that
That's
was fun.
great.
He was great.
So we have a couple more coffee at 10s, and then also we wanted to share with you our summer workshops are online, but we're having trouble with our internet right now. So, but if you go online, our summer programming, our summer exhibition, there's a lot of free programming. There are talks and then a lot of really great workshops. So we'll show those to you next week, but I hope you'll go online and
Cool.
see what we got going. And
Yeah.
we're just really grateful to have you here and
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
power and be.
Yes. And have
Thank
power. Oh, yeah.
you so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank
That was a
you.
great talk.
Yeah.
That was
Hopefully,
really good.
I'm